Let me introduce to you our three panelists. Julie Anderson of the European Commission. Let me invite you to come forward. Monsieur Gilles Bayat from France and Monsieur Luc de Schepper from Belgium. Give them an applause. Now, the nice thing about this thing is that I can walk now and they must sit. So I'm privileged. The first thing I would like to ask all three of you is to share with the people who have been here all day and discussed this, and quite a number of you have been here also all day and discussed. Why are you here? What was for you, from the work you do, from your experiences, the main motivation to come to open safe higher education in Rotterdam? I'll start with you, Julie Anderson.
Thank you very much. Well, for me, the main motivation professionally to come here was because I work in the higher education policy team in the Directorate General for Education and Culture, and we're currently looking at this issue and the wider issue of social inclusion and integration as part of the renewal of our modernisation agenda for higher education. We carried out a consultation process on that earlier this year, and we're now trying to work out what we want to put into a renewed area. But one of the things that we're very strong is we want to support higher education institutions in their work they do on inclusion. So we want to see how Europe can help. One of the areas we can help is in the follow-up to the Paris Declaration with regard to funding, which is, we're doing that through Erasmus+, with €400 million allocated this year for social inclusion, and a further €13 million allocated to scale up existing initiatives. So that's the professional reason. Personally, I have an interest in this area. I'm originally from Northern Ireland. I grew up with an awareness of radicalisation, knowing people who were radicalised, experiencing extended family members who were. So for me, when I look at this topic, I look at it way beyond the maybe common perception that it's radical Islam, because to me it's so much more than that.
The whole, let's say, concept of safe and open higher education, is that has that already become a, let's say, a main topic or priority within the modernization of higher education issue, or are you here also to, let's say, to be fed for let's say, making that part more stronger?
Yeah, for me today, the most important thing was actually to hear the issues that people are faced with, because I'm aware I'm not working in a higher education institution. So we can have policies, but we really need to hear the difficulties that people are dealing with every day, and especially to hear what works. And we'll be following the declaration and following the impact of the declaration. We have a group of member states and stakeholders that meets a few times a year. It's, for the jargon, it's called the Education and Training 2020 Working Group on the Modernisation of Higher Education. It's catchy. But we pick areas to look at and to share information, share best practice. And one of the areas we want to look at later this year is to look at what universities are doing in this area. And it struck me today that there's a lot I've learned today that it could be useful to bring that to Brussels and maybe have presentations on that.
Okay, thank you. Monsieur Gilles Bayat, I will talk to Mr. Bayat both in French and in English to make the discussion for him a bit more, let's say, vital.
Yes, excuse me for my very bad English, but with help of Mr. Kruger, I can try.
Monsieur Bayat, pour vous aussi, quelle est votre motivation de venir ici? Et disons, nous les Hollandais sommes naturellement très jaloux, parce que vous êtes aussi le président de l'Université de la Champagne, à Reims. C'est formidable. C'est pas mal d'être président d'une conférence de l'université, de président de l'Université de la Champagne, c'est formidable. Alors, vous êtes venu ici avec une motivation aussi dans l'actualité des universités de France.
Yeah, professional reason also, because I was president of this university between 2012 and 2015. And during my mandate, we are elected in France. During my mandate, I've known several kinds of problems linked with security and safety. For example, a big cyber attack, very big cyber attack, which come from a big Asiatic country near Japan or Korea. And I've known every year 2 or 3 times invasion, we can say, invasion from Rome. 1,000, 2,000 Roms invade my campus. And it's a very difficult case to régler, to gérer, to manage. Yeah. And overall, I've known the last year the consequences of the 2 terrorist attacks in France, and particularly the first attack, because one of the terrorists at the attack of January live very near my campus. And my students have lived during several days very important police presence with a helicopter in the night, very difficult case.
So l'atmosphère sur le campus était très émue.
Very students sometimes were afraid. It's irrational, but you were afraid. And at last, the last terrorist attack in November, which motives the ministries. We have 2 ministries in France for higher education and research. They brought together all the presidents, the 74 presidents, to reflect on the means to prevent and to manage in case of terrorist attack on our campus. The analysis of ministries is that terrorist attack necessarily come tomorrow in the future on the campus, in the university. Mm-hmm. And we have to prepare with this case, and it's very difficult. It's the reason why. There is another reason. Mm-hmm. I am also president of the commission of the CPU, Conference of Presidents of Universities, and this commission work about student life and campus life. And I was the chairman of the last annual congress of CPU at Orléans about campus in move.
Ce qui est très intéressant que vous avez dit, c'est les questions de l'ouverture et de la sécurité sont pas seulement le radicalisme, mais aussi les cyber attacks, qui sont mondiales, aussi chez vous. Alors ce thème est beaucoup plus vaste que certains incidents ou attaques.
Yes, more west. And I want to underline that it's a kind of problem which become more and more important. Mm-hmm. And universities in France begin to think that university is not only research and training, but there is a lot of themes, of topics which don't enable our missions.
You're part of society, not just isolated within research and science. Luc de Schepper, you are president of the University of Hasselt and also the chairman, president of the Flemish Inter-University Council. So let's say, both in your specific university and at a, let's say, broader level, you no doubt have had some very important experiences and also motivation to come here.
Yes, I'm indeed director of Hasselt University. At my university, of course, I think like in all universities, we have been working extensively in the last few years on hazard risk management, mainly, of course, on the cyber risks and also safety in laboratories and so on, which is a very important topic for universities. But we in Belgium, we have also been shocked by the Brussels and the Paris attacks, and suddenly, indeed, since these attacks, also security has become a major issue. And in the Flemish Inter-University Council, where all the rectors of the Flemish universities are represented, there has been indeed a debate during let's say, the last half year about how we can work on security, like also Mr. Baya told at our universities. We have seen many things that have been also discussed this morning during the talks. For instance, risk regulation reflexes we have seen from our politicians, but also from our students. Also, our students were very shocked by the attacks, although it were not specifically higher education institutes that were targeted by the terrorists, but in a way everybody feels that our campuses are very open, and that there is a higher risk maybe in a higher education institute than in other sectors of society. Experts have been discussing this extensively in Flanders, whether this is the case, yes or no. Is it really so that because a university is more open than another organization, that the risk for an attack, a terrorist attack, would be greater? There's no clear evidence for that at this moment, but okay, you see that typical risk regulation reflex behavior of people. In the beginning, our students were really asking for more security at the university, for security guards at the entrances and so on. Also, our police of the city of Hasselt had some very strange reflexes. They organized heavily armed patrols at the campuses of our university. They were driving from one campus side to the other side with a minibus and some 8 to 10 heavily weaponed police officers then came into the campus and walked around in the campus, creating a very strange atmosphere. And after they had been doing so for, let's say, 8 or 9 weeks or so, it was also the student council who asked to stop this, because they saw that this is creating really a very strange atmosphere at the campus, knowing that there was no real threat, and there were also no intelligence indications that universities were on visits by the terrorists. So
what was this, let's say, an outcome of, let's say, coordination between the Flemish Council or you at the Hasselt University and the local police, or was this an individual thing of the local community?
Our minister said every university should make arrangements with their own police departments of the cities. So every police department in Antwerp, there were different measures from Hasselt and different measures in Brussels, for instance. But our police in Hasselt was very strong in organizing all types of measures that, if you look back now to it, it's several months ago, was it really the typical risk regulation reflex that was discussed this morning, but what is leading to some measures that are really not very well thought through. So I was really interested, and also the Flemish Inter-University Council is very interested in the outcome of this conference, to see also how other people in other countries in Europe are dealing with this specific situation, since we will be dealing with it maybe for many years to come. So that's the reason why I was also interested to come to this conference.
Ms. Anderson, what you hear from the participants and now from the French and Flemish representatives, that is obvious that there is a clear, let's say, necessity or at least feeling that we should maybe, exchange experiences and maybe also different approaches within Europe, because what you say, in Hasselt they did this, in Antwerp they did this, in Brussels, the city was in a completely different situation than every other city in Europe. And the regional minister says, well, do it at a local level. And then you say, hey, what would be the experiences of our European partners? Well, your French partners, the Dutch here. Is this something for the Commission maybe to take on and say, what can we do from Europe? Also looking at the Rotterdam Declaration, what would we do from Europe to support higher education institutes in this process of knowledge exchange and even maybe working together?
Yes, I mean, I think that definitely, I mean, we need to support higher education institutions. We need to share what's happening, get a sense of what works, but come together and share that good practice. And I don't know if you're aware that last week the Commission published a communication on combating radicalization leading to violent extremism. And it took a holistic approach, looking at all sectors, including education, but also looking at radicalization in prisons. But in the education sector, it's very much focused on how we can work together. So part of the way we're doing that is by funding. Mm-hmm. So funding initiatives and anything that involves post-Paris follow-up, so on anti-radicalization and social inclusion and fundamental values and citizenship is going to get priority for funding. So that's one thing we can do. I think another thing is bringing people together. So that's definitely something we'll be looking at for later this year as well. And I think providing a forum, because what I found fascinating about today was the necessity of having policies in place as well. And I was at the workshop on recognizing alarming behavior. And then I was at the later one about governance and developing risk strategies. And they're both, it's so important to have support to develop those, so to ensure that good practice gets shared, gets communicated. So we'll be doing what we can to help with that and to listen to the experts.
The interesting thing is, which Mr. Bayat also said, and which we heard also in the various discussions, that it is not just, let's say, the actuality of radicalization or terrorist threats, but that it's a much broader issue. You know, cyber attacks, all kinds of privacy issues. Was a thing which was very interesting, that when research is working with industry and it, for instance, it develops very smart robots, those robots are very vulnerable to, of course, new kinds of cyber attacks, which the young people who make those things, you know, for dementia care robots and, you know, things like that, never think of. Mm-hmm. And who's then responsible when something, you know, happens with that robot?
No, it's terrifying. Yeah. I think that's why people need support, because and we need, from a European point of view, we need to be funding initiatives that are able to deal with this.
I was thinking of the Digital Europe agenda, and I thought this could be an interesting new point, because it's not in there yet, which is understandable. Mm-hmm. But maybe this could be a new point to raise. Yeah.
Well, it's a dynamic process. So
yeah.
I could see it in the future, definitely.
Okay, Mr. De Schepper, if you look at the Rotterdam Declaration, there will be elements certainly also from your experiences, and also maybe the, how do you call this, the not so easy part of how do we get things together? How are we alert? How do you deal with a very forceful local police presence who mean well, but maybe, you know, are not very effective? If you look at the Rotterdam Declaration, which are elements that you say this could be helpful for me in Hasselt, or this could also be helpful for us as Flemish university presidents as a group in, you know, developing our policies, our strategies, and our effectiveness?
Yeah, I think the Rotterdam Declaration is, of course, just the beginning. But what we learn from is that we need a total approach for security in different areas, safety, security, also of course cyber security. But that I think for each of them we should think about what is the most relevant policy to follow. I mean, I think it's different for the three domains. For cybersecurity and safety in laboratories, for instance, yeah, you lead to a real prevention policy. You can really try to have a policy making that is focused on prevention. You want to avoid these things simply, and you can avoid them if you have good internal policy, I think. For security, it's different. You cannot prevent something to happen. If there is a terrorist attack, it's very, very difficult to prevent. Even if you try to prevent, you get counterproductive measures, I think. So in that case,
so there is this balance between open and safe.
Yeah,
where
openness is so extremely important for a higher education institute that you cannot give in on this issue in order to get a better security policy. I don't think it's possible to do so. We have to be open in principle, and it's also very difficult to prevent it. If you try to, we have been thinking about the policy, trying to educate students and staff in preventing something like that to happen, and make them aware of the possibility and alertness with people and so on. But it always turns out to be counterproductive. We have been trying it for 3 or 4 months in Belgium. It's simply not productive. If you try to educate students to be aware of the risk and to call a number at the moment that they see something at the university that is in their perception is not normal, some strange reactions happen. We have had in our university an incident that is called the Peurmans incident. Peurmans is the chairman of the Flemish Parliament. He was giving at our university a lecture at 8 in the evening, from 8 to 10 for law students. And at a certain moment, one of the students, and we had to alert them to be aware of certain risk. Some of the students noticed someone walking in the building, not well clothed and so on. Clearly not a university student, clearly also not someone who was giving there a talk. And instead of calling the internal number, they immediately called the police number. And 10 minutes later, police was there with 4 or 5 units and picked up Peurmans, the chairman of parliament, up. They put him in a police car for an hour. He was not very happy, and the whole evening was ruined for him and for the students. So,
and the next morning you were in all the newspapers, and you had to explain. And,
No, but this is it's very difficult to educate people if you want to be. If you want to work on prevention. So I think we will not do this anymore. But I think what is very important in the Rotterdam Declaration, there's much we can do in the 3 domains. And I'm very happy, therefore, also with this conference, and it's going to be continued also, I heard, in best practices in learning from each other as a higher education institute. I've seen very nice things like the app ICE in the workshop, in case of emergency. Yeah, that's very handsome to have this type. Also, Lab Servant is very nice application. So you see that at several universities and university colleges, people are developing apps and also the manual that we have seen. It's very interesting if we share these things with one another, because if everybody is going to work out this type of app, it's not very efficient. We can better share these things. If things work well, we should use them as best practices at all our universities and university colleges.
Monsieur Gaillard, plus ou même la même question. Quel aspect du Déclaration de Rotterdam est pour vous, dans vos expériences de cyber attack jusqu'aux attaques, etc. à Paris, en particulièrement, disons, relevant et effectif?
At first, the importance of Rotterdam Declaration is in the subject itself, because, as I say before, we need this question become an important question for universities. And this declaration warned all the university on this subject. We have to prepare our establishment to another life we have known in the past. And I think cyber attack, but also terrorist attacks, there are new facts. And we are very démunis.
Yeah. Unarmed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When the ministers brought together the presidents in Paris in November, most of them say they prefer openness, the majority. But someone hope yet closure and want to enforce or build new walls all around the campus. And it is a real problem for the soul of university, for the spirit of university.
The soul of the university.
Yes. And the Rotterdam Declaration, it's a good thing to say again that universities have to be open on the society, on the city. Even it's very difficult to ensure this security. In my university, I have 13 campuses in 5 towns. 13 campuses. And I need 1,000, maybe 2,000 security people to help to give more security to students and staff. It's not possible. We have to work in deepness, in the spirit. We have to prepare people with a fight against ideas from radicalism or all this stream of thought.
The mayor of Rotterdam, Mr. Abu Taleb, this morning said it is, well, he almost said it, but he didn't say it in English. He almost said it, it was a fallacy. It was wrong to think that higher education, should be the spot where you do this. He said it's a thing which happens in families. It's a thing which happens in communities, and schools and education are linked. They are linked to what happens in families and communities. But it's dangerous to say schools or universities must be the platform to do this. Do you agree? Oui, le maire de Rotterdam, M. Abu Taleb, nous a dit ce sont les familles, ce sont les communautés où cet combat contre le radicalisme doit être fait. Et c'est dangereux de dire aux écoles ou les instituts d'éducation qu'ils sont obligés de faire ce combat. Parce qu'ils ne sont pas ces familles, ils sont très étroits avec ces familles. Vous êtes d'accord avec cette analyse?
Yes. The last meeting of Orléans, I played before, has finished on a declaration. Also a declaration, which reaffirms that universities are at the service of territories. It's for territory and for people, for all the people, for the community. And it's in France, it's a new paradigm because the tradition in France is the universities close on itself because the place of building knowledge and transmission, it's a place not in the community but near the community. And we see currently that a lot of problem, not only about safety and security, only in research, only in training, professional insertion, for example. A lot of problem need new links between universities and the nation. Yes?
So it's interesting that this debate has also to do with what you call the paradigm of what the university is for. You know, who are its stakeholders you want to include in the discussion, for instance, on what is safe and what must still be open. And so it would be maybe an interesting idea to have the Orléans Declaration and debate linked to the Rotterdam Declaration and see what, you know, where it meets and maybe where there are some tensions. Maybe something for the Commission to see how those paradigms of universities are also become a point of discussion in the changes we see, you know, in the reality of today.
Yeah, because I found it very interesting when the mayor was talking about the role of families and the role of communities, and I was, because we talk obviously about the third mission of universities, about civic engagement and how to support universities in that and how to encourage that, and the role that universities have in access programs and developing access programs and trying to make their student body reflective of the community and the outreach they play in that. And I was trying to think as well about what role you could make for parents within that as well, because obviously the difference is that at university everybody's an adult, or generally everyone is an adult. So I think it's something definitely to look at how you can involve communities wider. And another area is when we have the difficult, or it sometimes can be a bit challenging, the discussion about if you have freedom of speech versus protection, and if you have a policy about inviting speakers and how you deal with controversial speakers as well. So I think it's to do with community engagement and how you can maybe, if you are having a controversial speaker, if there can be a balance there on how you manage
who defines controversy?
Yeah,
around
I'm
the
aware
speaker?
it's a subjective. Sometimes it's the students define it. I'm aware of that becoming an issue in some countries, not all, but where there's the concept of the safe space within the university and protecting students from hurt. But sometimes that can extend, it can become very subjective and can extend to not having speakers on who might hurt students, and how you manage that. I know it's a controversial issue in some universities in the UK and in America, where sometimes the protection of the student comes before the freedom of speech, so it can be difficult to manage as well. Actually, one of the things I really liked in the Rotterdam Declaration was the empowerment of teachers part. I thought that was really, really important and really stood out as something that we should all be working on.
Mm-hmm.
You agree, Mr. De Schepper, on the teachers?
Yes, certainly, but I would like to comment shortly on what the mayor said this morning. It is, of course, the role of communities and parents and so on to fight and to avoid and try to prevent radicalization with younger people. But there is certainly a very important role for the education system as a whole, of which the university is part, of course. We have a very serious problem in Belgium, but I think it's also a problem in some other or many European countries, that we really have not an inclusive educational system. Yeah? People from different ethnic origins are not feeling that they are treated equally with our own young people. So we see in practice a separation in school. You see more and more white schools coming up, and schools where there are many youngsters from different ethnic groups, and that is creating a situation that is really not good in society. We have education system is no longer a system promoting social equality. It's not longer doing it in our country. And the result you see at the university, of course. At my university, we have only 7% of the students are from another ethnic background. Only 7%. While in the region where we are living, in reality, it's 40 to 50% of the 18-year-old people are from another ethnic background than being Flemish. So there's something happening during the education system from lower school to university where we are not treating people equally. And the result is, of course, that there are very serious tensions in society. So I think we should think about the role of our education system. And of course, university is on top of that system, but starting from going to school at 4 or 3, till they are leaving university at 22 or 23, something is happening, and we get really a divided society. And this is something we should think about and that's also and do research about how we can avoid this type of unwanted societal evolution.
Interesting, because what you, in a sense, say is that both the meaning of the word open and the meaning of the word safe is much richer than just one part, because this, of course, has to do with the openness of the education system as a cultural phenomenon.
And at the same time, we see that in Flanders, for instance, our government is reducing the openness of the university because they absolutely want to install some admission tests at the university. Yeah. Everybody knows that this type of tests have a very great bias for social background. Yeah? People of lower social classes do perform less good at admission tests. Yeah? We see this for the admission test, for instance, for medicine in Flanders. Yeah? If both your parents have a diploma of higher education, the chances you pass the exam is 25%. If none of your parents has a diploma of higher education, your chances to pass the exam are half, 13%. So you really see that the admission policy that's now wanted because they want to save money in the higher education system, and too many students are not doing well in the first year at university. So they put in place admission tests, but the social bias is enormous, and the openness of the university for all social classes is reducing. In Flanders, we were making progress for an inclusive higher education system and more people of lower classes entering the university until the end of the last century. Yeah? And since this new century, it's reducing again. So you see less and less people of lower social background entering the university. And this is really not good for the openness of the institutions.
Yeah. Let me round off the discussion with asking you all three the same question. So, la même question pour tous les trois. And that is, very often conferences like this are about the declaration as well, but the things we know, or things we think we know. Very important by this, when you address a new issue, is what do we not know? What are questions we question ourselves about? And we should address maybe not in Rotterdam, but in the next meeting. So let me ask you, all three of you, what question, what thing do you say, I'm not sure about this, I don't know yet, we should discuss this? Let me start with Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. I guess practically with the declaration, we don't know yet its impact. We don't know where it will be strongest. One of the things I felt was missing was students within it and the input students should have. Because I can see them mentioned in it, but it just says board, staff and students have their own role and responsibilities in this. But it doesn't talk about consulting students. It talks about joint actions between parties, scientists, policymakers, heads of board, teachers and security officers. So that's one of the things I don't know is how can we involve students and what will work by involving students, and particularly, and it's actually a question, if I'm allowed to ask a question, is anyone involving radicalised students or formerly radicalised students? And are there good results with that? Because they have a really strong role to play. So I'd be interested in that.
That's a very challenging idea you put on. Mr. De Schepper.
Yeah, there are several things we are not sure about, of course, we have to work further on. The first is certainly how helpful is it to work together on this issue? Yeah? I really believe, personally I believe it's very important that we share best practices and so on, and that we use nice applications and apps that have been developed in other institutions. I'm not sure we really know. We have a common ground in Europe on what a risk hazard policy should be at the higher education institute. So that's also very interesting thing to further discuss about, because when I look to different colleague universities, it's certainly so that we don't all have the same policy. So, and there should be a more effective policy and less effective policy. So it's very interesting to see if we are working on this for a while, what is really effective, an effective policy, and what is a less effective policy. So it's very interesting to have a conference, let's say, and on a regular basis, where we have presentations of different universities and institutes explaining what their policies is, and also measuring what the effect of the policy is, so that we really learn, like in other domains of science, what are the best practices, what is best to do, what is evidence-based, and what is not evidence-based. So that's very interesting also to further study. So I hope that in the future there might be a regular conference on this topic, where really institutes are presenting their policies, the effectiveness, measurements about the evidence of what is effective and what is not. So I hope that could be a result.
But the profiles of universities and institutes, of course, are
Yes.
different. The technical university
Of course.
focusing on nuclear research is something else than a music conservatory.
This is clear, of course,
Yeah.
but you can have several sessions in the conference, that's no problem.
Yeah. Monsieur Baya, pour vous aussi, l'inconnu, la question pas encore répondue.
There is a question for me, which is very important and mysterious. The radicalization process itself. There is a paradox. Why students, because there is a lot of students who become radicalist and become terrorist. Why is it possible in a society of science, of rationalism? Why students in informatics, in computer, for example, because they are the most numerous which bascule in radicalism. Why is it possible? We are all university from its origin is to fight against thought of darkness with the light from 18th century. And today, currently, we see students prefer darkness more than light. And I hope understand why. It's a real subject of research. And I think that in the countries, but also and overall in Europe, there is a need of new research about this. And the next meeting will be able, maybe, to give results about this question.
Well, thank you very much. I think we have agendas for at least 6 consecutive meetings on this, because each of your suggestions has, let's say, more than just one perspective, for which I'm very grateful to you, because this gives us, again, vitamins for, let's say, continuing the Rotterdam Declaration and giving it extra depth and hopefully also extra impact. Thank you very much.